Hi, this is Gavin Dodd. My candidate number is 1025198, and this is my reflective analysis for sound and music for games. For this project, I decided to use the Viking village. I chose to do this as I felt it was the largest area of all the games provided, and I felt like it gave me the best possible chances for me to be creative and try and employ all the necessary techniques that I'd need to do so. So those techniques employed were atmosphere, music, dialogue, and sound effects. I'm also going to be talking about how I made the audio loops and recorded all the sounds out in the field and gathered sounds off the internet through sound libraries and edited them within Logic, and then how I incorporate them all into Unity running through FMod. So I had two main influences towards the idea for this game. The first being an episode of Family Guy where Stewie and Brian are travelling between lots of different universes, parallel universes. So that's where I sort of had this idea that you can get lots of different, very different universes, which could involve anything. You know, there's no end to the opportunities in which could be inside the universe. So it sort of left me to be creative enough with the use of loops and sound effects to create these universes behind doors. My second influence is a game called Accountant. It has the idea that there's a narrator talking to you over an intercom, which is where I got the inspiration to have my character talking to you as if he's talking through a walkie-talkie or through a headset or something. And in that game, you're traveling through not different universes, but you're traveling through virtual reality. It's a bit of a parody game, but you each time you put on a different virtual reality helmet, you get sucked into this new reality, and that's sort of very along the similar lines. And that you're along the lines that you're being instructed by someone along the way. I didn't quite make it as witty as theirs, but I like to add a little bit of wit into my game to make it enjoyable. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is my atmosphere and how I made it immersive within the game. So I'll start with the waves. So this was simply done by adding a studio event emitter through FMod of some of my audio, which I recorded of the waves down on Hove Beach using the Zoom H6 actually. So I played around with the min-max distance on this distance attenuation to get it sounding right, and this is a perfect loop. I'll show later how I edited this in Logic, sort of the technique in which I get a seamless loop in Logic. So I played around with this so that it worked effectively. It sounded realistic. The closer you got to the waves, the more genuine it sounded. You were getting closer. Took me a while. At some point I could hear the waves over here, which was not ideal. I only wanted to hear the waves when I was close up. So let's go in and have a little listen. Okay, so here we are. So as you can see, as you can hear, as we're up close to the water, we can hear that water flowing, and it's panning around. As it's set to the block out there, it'll always be set to the location in which it is. So as I'm further away, I can no longer hear the water, and as the closer I move, sound of the water comes in. So the second part of atmosphere I'm going to be talking about is the wind you can hear throughout. So this was made with an audio sample again. What I used a white noise filter and edited it with the use of a frequency shifter, and that's pretty much sort of my way of making wind noise. And with this, I have a parameter on it from -30 to -18 set to different zones. So we have wind max, which is nearer the shore. So when you're in that box, the wind is set to 1. When you're in the mid box, which is this small box here, the event is set to 0.5, meaning this is going to be here. So the volume is going to be much less. And then further away, this parameter is going to be set to 0, which on this is at -30. This was my way of showing as the further you get away from the water, the less wind there is. This is something I would have potentially done with the use of music, but as my idea meant me having music set throughout all these different buildings, having ambient music throughout the level just was not possible, and I thought it's either one or the other, and I preferred the idea of having music in the parallel universes. And it actually adds a very awesome element to the atmosphere and really makes it feel realistic. So let's jump inside and hear that for ourselves. So I'll start us here at the back of the map, and you can hear the wind is very subtle. So if I move closer, I'll stop talking and I'll just walk towards the shore, and you'll hear the wind pick up. Another thing I want to mention for this, I also added smoothing at 0.33 milliseconds, just so it wasn't so harsh when you're moving from zone to zone. It sounds natural enough. There's no harsh breaks. It's a nice smooth sort of glide along the zones, affecting the volume. So next I'm going to talk about my sound effects in my game. My sound effects consist of the fire for the torches, the footsteps from the player model, the jump noise from the player model, and the wood creaking and metal squeaking attached to the wheel. So the fire is made of a single torch sound, which is a continuous loop, and the torch sound has a start offset, so not every single torch in the game starts at the same point of the loop, starts in a different section, and each torch has a randomized pitch so that no two torches sound the same. The footsteps are made using a script I found online, so I've attached 4 noises: the wood one, a water one, a dirt one, which is a multi-sound of 5 separate ones, and a sand one. And I've applied the same randomization on pitch and volume for each of these so that no two footsteps next to each other sound the same. The scripting within Unity allows for the surface in which the player is walking on to be detected, meaning if I was walking on wood, wood would be at 1, allowing this parameter to be on full at 1, meaning the volume is at max and you can hear the wood footsteps. And if I was on a dirt surface, dirt would be at 1 and wood would be at 0, meaning wood would be off and dirt would be on. So the jump noises within the game were a quick joke I put in, which allowed the narrator to say, silly jump noises have been attached to your jump mechanism, such as don't bother jumping, but that encourages the player to jump and plays a silly noise. This is just a way of me showing that I can use multi-sounds on a single action. So through the use of someone who works at Unity, they helped me script a way of every time you press the spacebar, which meant you jump, it would attach to a studio event emitter playing the jump event, in which it would play a randomized noise from the list. Finally is the basic wheel noise, which consists of the wood creaks, a random 10-1 with a random pitch, and the metal squeak, a random 4-1 with also pitch. So let's jump into the game and hear those sound effects. So we'll start with the jumping. Secondly, we'll go on to the footsteps. So if I walk on this wood, we hear a wood noise. And if I walk on this dirt, we hear dirt noises. And finally, the muddy texture, which is a combination of the dirt and the water steps. You can hear no two steps sound the same. Next, we can hear the burning torches. And the final noise is the creaking wheel. In the next section, I'm going to be talking about dialogue. There's no effects applied within FMod, although I've removed the distance attenuation as I want this to sound like it's coming through an intercom, straight to the listener. The effects I have applied onto the dialogue is a basic channel EQ, just to make it sound like it's coming through small speakers. Here's a quick example of some dialogue. I've applied walkie-talkie effects to the start and the finish of the dialogue.
Actually, this is where the caretaker Jerry lives. Don't worry about this one.
So the way this is triggered within the game is by having an invisible cube that acts as a trigger affected by the player, which then plays one time the event within FMod. So next I'm going to be talking about the music and the universes within the game. So this is where I'm going to show you how I made my loops of one of my songs. So the technique I use here is by chopping the music in half and applying it to the front end of it and then mixing it midway so that when it loops it's actually perfectly in time. Let's see a quick example of that. Seamless. So the effects I've placed onto this piece of music and on all the other corresponding piece of sound effects and parallel universes are an EQ and a reverb. So the EQs I've applied, I've left the low end because I want it nice and boomy, and I've taken out lots of the mid and lots of the high. This is to make it sound like it is in an enclosed space behind, you know, this door through this portal. And the reverb is to give it that extra space to make it sound like it's through a portal. So let's jump into the game and see how I put it in there. So the way I have my universes set up are by simply having a game object of a cube hidden behind each door, and each cube has an event emitter with the play event set to object start and the correct corresponding universe applied to it, and that will loop forever, and you'll only hear it as you go close to the door, as it has a distance attenuation of only 8. So let's jump in and see what that sounds like alongside the triggered dialogue. So as I approach the building, we'll start to hear the universe and we'll hear the dialogue trigger, and we'll also might get a glance at the loop.
Ah, cool, check it out, a Sonic universe, nice.
Let's go see if we can find another example of another universe.
Wait, is someone, wait, hold on, shh, be quiet. Is someone knocking on that door? No one should be in there. I'd get away if I was you, mate. I'd leave that one, quick, get away, get away, get away.
Because of the short time period I had to make this game, not every house has a universe in, but what I've done for the empty ones is recorded a simple, oh, there's nothing in here message. Let's see what that's like.
No, doesn't seem to be one in there.
And no two are the same. Here's another example.
Nah, I don't think there's anything in there.
So to conclude this reflective analysis, I've showed you how I applied all of the techniques I have applied within my project, what effects I used to affect all the music, the universes, the dialogue, etc., and how I managed to get it running within Unity and have it immersive and show how it was adaptable and changed as the player did. It wasn't just a single track running in the background. You know, it was adaptable to what you are doing, you know, in this immersive environment. So I think this was a really good project. I'm really happy with the approach I had towards this. I think I learned a hell of a lot of techniques about this, and want to venture even further into this. I feel I'm quite proud of this project. The only issue I may have had is, I think, obviously it's supposed to be a Viking village. I didn't want to steer away too much from it, but that didn't really interest me too much. I wanted to do a much more modern feel, which is where I feel I managed to incorporate it well within the game. Is in a sense of, okay, it wasn't a Viking village noises, but it did sound like they were genuinely parallel universes behind these doors. You know, the sounds of the waves you can hear, the wind. You know, everything's still natural to within the environment. It's just not time-wise. It's just not in the same decade or century. But that's the only sort of criticism I have towards it. I think if I were to do it again, I would maybe think about having some ambient music throughout the game and use different zones to trigger separate stems. It's not like I don't know how to do that. It's just I decided not to do that because I wanted the freedom of making these different parallel universes. But that's one way I would have done it differently if I were to do this again in the future. I would maybe have the ambient music set to a tempo where all the parallel universes are also in that same tempo, and maybe just have a drum track underneath, so you have this altering music throughout your world, but it doesn't clash with the universes and what you hear inside. But who's to say that would be a good idea? That's just maybe something I could have tried if I had more time. But yeah, thank you for listening. There's a brief picture of my bibliography at the end. I hope you've enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this module and look forward to do some more with sound and music for games. Thank you very much.